Welcome to Bird Dog Tales. This is episode 3. I'm here with John Hollaball, one of my former my ninth grade science teacher, and he's here to talk about his dog, Laker. So, John, welcome to the show. This is actually we always just call it out here. This is our second recording of this episode because we messed up the audio. So we are going to do our best to go through some of these things, but it's showing up on our screen the right way now. So we should all be good. So tell us a little bit about your dog Laker, and I'm kind of glad that the second one that came out, because the story that you told us afterwards about how you got your Brittany Spaniel Laker would be a great start to kind of our time here.
Laker's the one that started it all. I mean, it's morphed into today. It's a total lifestyle. It's an obsession. But Laker was the first. He was born in 1991, and I had briefly hunted behind his father, and the guy had bred his male Brittany with a female down in New Haven, Indiana. And he called me up one morning and said, "Hey, let's go look at this litter. You said you wanted a puppy." I got up that morning, no idea I was going to end up with a dog by the end of the day. And so we went down and we went and looked at this litter. And I know we'll get a little pushback from some of your listeners, but it's pretty much a well-known documented fact that there's nothing on the planet that's cuter than a Brittany puppy. There's no question. So I ended up bringing this puppy home. I named him Laker on the way home after the lake we live on. We live on Little Long Lake, and that was his registered name, Little Long Laker. Got him home. Probably the worst time ever to get your first dog or any dog. Zan and I we were just married. We were living in a tiny little lake cottage. We didn't have any money. We didn't have any time. We were both coaches, coaching multiple sports. And she was visiting her college roommate that weekend. And she had no idea. We hadn't discussed anything about a puppy, nothing. She called home and I told her, "Oh, by the way," and let's just say that conversation did not go real well. She was not very pleased. And so the next day she came home. She had stayed at her college roommate's place that evening. And then the next day I was out on the lake ice fishing. And I remember she marched right out there. She was all hot and bothered, all puffy. And "Where's this dog?" And I remember I unzipped my jacket and his little Brittany head popped out and all the puffiness went away. So that was the end. So he kind of broke her down because she said, "I'm not going to have a dog in my house," to the point where now the dog's own us. That's how we got Laker. And he really started everything. He started what has become, I think it was on your first or second podcast, you or your dad mentioned something about a lifestyle. And that's really what it is. It's it dictates our daily schedule. That's why I drive a great big Chevy Suburban, or in this case, a Yukon XL. It's just at this point, it's what I live for. I love a lot of things. I love deer hunting and mushroom hunting and turkey hunting and sports, but it's bird hunting that really is what I'm passionate about.
And you and Laker got your start here in Northeast Indiana, Williams County, Ohio. Can you tell a little bit about how he got you into this lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize it at the time. I mean, the timing could not have been better for me. So his first hunting season was 1992. The tri-state area, Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio, right here. And that's where we live is within a mile or two of where those three states come together. So I have the advantage of hunting all three states and the disadvantage of buying at least 2 non-resident licenses back when I couldn't afford them. But we had a lot of birds. People don't realize how good the hunting was around here. We had a lot of CRP, there were a lot of pheasants. Through teaching at the school, through my wife teaching in Williams County, Ohio, through what has become my hunting partner, Mike Spangler, his family was connected with a lot of farmers through their Ford implement dealership in Williams County, Ohio. Basically, I had a lot of private ground that I could hunt, a lot of very good ground. And Laker and I just hit it hard. We hit it every day after school, all, on the weekends. And it was a lot of fun. We made a lot of mistakes. I didn't know what I was doing. Laker was a hard-charging, hard-headed Brittany, but he was driven to hunt and he found birds. And if I was just lucky enough to be close to him when he found them, I could get a shot at him. That was a long time ago. I was in pretty good shape back then. I couldn't hunt like that today, but he found birds, and together we muddled through it and learned slowly how to hunt the right way and hunt with a disciplined, trained dog. But he and we grew up together. I got him when I was in my 20s, lost him when I was in my 40s. And so we really, as hunters, matured and grew up together. So he taught, not only did he teach me a lot as to where to find birds during what kind of weather and all that, but he also taught me a lot about what you didn't want in a bird bag. So there were lessons to be learned there. And I was just lucky because I had a lot of ground and there were a lot of birds.
Yeah, Northeast Indiana was covered in birds back in the day. And talk a little bit about how Laker and some of the Brittany's had, just like how good we actually had it. I wish we still did.
I feel sorry for anybody trying to, cut their teeth like that. We had it great. Williams County, Ohio was an unknown gem. There were 36,000 acres, I believe, in CRP. I want to say maybe more than an 8-county east of the Mississippi River. There were a lot of birds.
There's a lot of birds.
And so, I, as you well know, I keep meticulous records.
Yeah, we're going to get into those here.
There was a stretch of 20 years, really from 1992 to 2013, that I would harvest between 60 and 70 birds a year, just right here without leaving the tri-state.
Yeah.
Like I said, Laker wasn't the most disciplined dog, and I was not the greatest shot, but we had a lot of birds, and we could, if you wanted to hunt hard, which we were willing to do, you were going to get your birds. I mean, if you have the property to hunt that I had, I was really lucky. And I saw it go full circle to the point where Mike Spangler and I lost our last good CRP field that was loaded with wild birds about 2 or 3 years ago. And now what few birds are left around here, we still scrape around and get a few, but to get our fix, we're putting the miles on. We're hunting all over the West.
Yeah. So Laker, kind of when your first hunts with him, talk a little bit about that very first hunt that you had in some of those fields.
Well, the very first hunt, so it would have been opening day of 1992, opening day in Michigan. Michigan always comes in before any other. It comes in October 20th, regardless of what day of the week it is. October 20th, Michigan opener. He was about 10 and a half months old that first season because he was born in December, so he didn't hunt, obviously, that the year he was born. That evening of October 19th, and I, like I said, I keep records and everything, but I had to go on the internet to just verify what I had down was right, and I knew it was, but we had a pretty good blanket of snow on October 19th of 1992. And that's a bird hunter's dream, to have a fresh blanket of snow on the ground opening morning. Well, I couldn't anymore to have it be at school. So all day I thought I just couldn't wait to get home. And I drove home like a maniac, and I grabbed Laker and went to a property a few miles from our house. It was a Michigan Hap property, and there were good birds there. I'd been running him on that property, and my heart sunk when I got there. I was so naive, thinking, well, maybe nobody's been here. There were a million human tracks and dog tracks in the snow. All Laker wanted to do was run around and mark territory. So I grabbed him and we went home. And we had, at that time, 2 CRP fields right behind our house. And CRP both have birds in it. One was in Michigan, one was in Indiana, because our yard happens to be the state line. And we hunted until dark, and right at dark, a rooster flew in to roost for the night. And Laker and I saw it, and he circled around behind it and got the bird between the two of us and put the bird up, and I got it. And it was just the most exhilarating feeling. My own dog, wild bird, I made the shot, and quite frankly, it's a shotgun my dad bought me for my 16th birthday. I used side by side a fox, or a Savage Fox model. I cannot hit the broadside of a barn with that gun, but I dumped that bird, and I was just ecstatic. And I can remember walking home to our house and just thinking that was the greatest thing ever. And it's still, every time I shoot a bird, it's just a great, exhilarating feeling.
Yeah,
people don't understand, people don't always understand hunters. It's not for killings. It's for everything that went into it. It's the dog work, and you made the shot, and It's all the time you put in, and it's what they were bred to do. And, I firmly believe it's what I was meant to do.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's just I tell people all the time. It's not the dog. It's not. It is all of that, but it's where that dog takes you. That's important. Like in life and the lessons they teach you and the people they connect you to is always that.
It is. It's a lifestyle. It becomes a way of life. I mean, I'm so glad and thankful that I found early in life what really makes me tick. My best friend Ed Moffler, he raises cattle, and that's his thing. And for me, it's bird hunting. I love to deer hunt, turkey hunt, all these other things, but it's bird hunting that is my true passion, and that's why I retired. I still liked my job, but I wanted to bird hunt.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about. We're all a little jealous of the life you get to lead now, but where I know Laker got you into this, but where are you at now on your journey?
I do this is for your audience. This is our second recording.
Yeah.
We had technical problems with the first one after doing the entire
I said, you came in here like you're the experts. I'm like, no, this is episode 3. We're not experts at anything. I'm just glad we had the time to get you back in here.
I'm glad we do have this second take, because I really have to give my wife a ton of credit for allowing me to do all this. And she sees it our dogs are her babies.
Mm.
And so she sees it in the dogs that this is what they love more than anything. So I'm not sure she's super thrilled that I'm on the road for 5.5 months, but she understands it's what we love and she lets us do it. So for that, really thankful. But yeah, it's the last 2 years, I've basically had a similar schedule. So 14, 15 states we hunted, and Ontario over a 5.5 month stretch. That's I think I had 115 days in the field last year.
Mm-hmm.
Actually even added to that schedule for this coming hunted. I'm trying to think how many different birds last year, but out of 22 upland birds, that's my list. There's a couple I'm never going to hunt. I'm never going to hunt a Himalayan snowcock in the Ruby Mountains in Nevada. But there are 22 birds that I'd like to get, and I've taken 16 of them, and most last year and the year before, most of those each season.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, the only bird that I hunted and didn't get were dusky grouse, and I was able to take 4 last year in the Bighorn Mountains.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite. Yeah, it's funny you said that, because in the last recording, I've done work at the elementary school there in Buffalo Home. It's one of my favorite places. I keep telling
Buffalo is kind of a staging area for a lot of sportsmen.
Yeah,
a lot of elk hunters.
Moose.
It's a beautiful little town.
There's moose up in the mountains up there too. Yeah.
And so Buffalo and east of Buffalo on Highway 16, or west of Buffalo on Highway 16, you'll run into the Bighorns. And I hit that as I'm going from North Dakota and South Dakota. It's a pit stop for me to hunt dusky grouse, and I hunt them one evening and the next morning. And it's just the most beautiful hunt you could ever imagine. Where I park is at 9,400 feet, and you go straight up from there. So you're up around 10,000 feet. The scenery is incredible. Your lungs are burning because none of us are in the shape we used to be in, and that high altitude will get you up. But the scenery is unbelievable. And then to harvest a couple is just icing.
Yeah, just icing. Yeah, it definitely is. Laker, I know you've got a system learned about. You started with Laker, but what's your naming system here for all your Brittany's? And I know you've had some other dogs other than Brittany's that didn't work into that, but
they didn't work. I named Laker just kind of off the cuff, bringing him home that first day from New Haven, and I named him after our lake, and so Laker. And so everything I do has to.
Yeah, I know.
I'm pretty analytical and particular, and Suzanne has other not so nice names for those traits, but the formula has become, it's my formula. The dog has to, all our Brittany's have had a 5-letter first name, 5-letter name. None of the first letters can repeat. So you can't have 2 dogs that started with the letter S, for instance. And they all have to be related to. So we have Laker, and then Storm, and then River, and then Creek and Dewey. And River, actually, my mom named River, and Dewey, our youngest, our 3-year-old, Suzanne named Dewey. I thought maybe Dewey was a little bit of a stretch, but now it fits him, and he's Dewey. And so that's the system. So when people find that system out, they're all, they start thinking and they start, I'll get a text from somebody, hey, have you thought of this? And believe me, I think we've thought of every 5-letter word name for it when it's related to water. And we kind of have a short list. I think on the first broadcast I told you, we were up in northern Michigan at a good friend of ours, name's Rick Moore, and their family owns a place north of Goodhart, Michigan, where we go to grouse hunt. And so we're all sitting around the table one evening. A whole bunch of us are up there to grouse hunt, and that system gets brought up, and they ask me, "Hey, what's what's the short list for the next puppy?" And I threw out Frost, which I didn't think was bad. And immediately I just get drilled by my so-called buddies. And I won't tell you what they said, but my masculinity was being questioned at that point. Frost is off the table.
Yeah.
Frost is off the table. And we have a few other ones on the short list, but that's the system. And it's worked out, and I don't know, I'm well over 60 now. And so I don't know how many puppies I have left. All of ours have checked out in about that 12 years of age. And then you start doing the math and you start thinking, okay, if I get another puppy in 2 years, how old am I going to be when it's, so
Yeah.
you hate to think that.
Yeah, but that's true. We talk about with Dad all the time. How many dogs you're when you get to a certain age, he says your life is measured in the number of dogs you have left, right? And
at this point, I'm planning on
at least one more. Oh, we joked about this before on our last recording, but after that last one, like who gets all those shotguns? That's the big question.
Yeah, you pimped me about that, and I told you weren't the first person.
Yeah, I know I can be.
We don't have any children, and so and I have some pretty nice shotguns, and so that's always, hey, by the way, has anybody got their name on that Fauste? Has anybody got that? It's like, oh, hold on there. I still think I got a few years to use it.
Yeah, I love shotguns. So I'm not that guy. I'm like, I'm going to be deadly with the one for as long as I possibly can. Some guys like to switch them up and change them, but I shot the same Beretta for 25 years before I switched to the second Beretta.
Yeah,
that's the first thing I bought my first paycheck. Yeah.
I love shotguns and I love the art of them and I love the mechanics of them. And my dad was not a hunter, but he liked guns. He was a shooter. And when the bird numbers got so low around here, I decided, you know what, I want to use a different gun every time I hunt. And then when you get that, our bird numbers are so low, when you would get that rare opportunity, you miss it because you're going for the safety in front of the
sure.
Ancestor Motto 12 is different than, and then you revert back to that grocery getter, the one gun that's all beat up that you've used
for everything. I get that with my boots too. I like a good pair of boots, and I almost get teary-eyed when I know how many miles I've put on a pair and I got to replace them. The same thing. I want to wear out a pair of boots and I want to wear out a shotgun before I gotta move on.
People, it's hard for people to imagine, but I used to go through a pair of boots a season, and our CRP around here was brutal, abrasive. That you would wear a hole in the toe in a single season. Yeah. Then I started putting what's the shoe goo, the hitchers.
Yeah, same thing.
I take a brand new, $200 pair of Upland boots and put shoe goo on to try to stretch out, to 2 seasons. Fortunately, days around here are gone. You had enough property to pound for a whole season.
Yeah. Western grass is still hard on them, but not nearly as hard as what we had around here. Yeah. I can get good 4 or 5 years out of a pair of boots now, but I only wear them when I'm hunting. I wear rubber boots and shorts out here, the Barbarossa uniform most of the time. We'll get back to Laker a little bit, but what's one story? I know last time you talked about the tri-state hunt with your husband. You also talked about one of the hunts with your wife. Also, so maybe tell us both.
I found out I was going to do this. She said, "Oh, you remember?" I said, "Yeah, I remember." It's probably the best memory, most memorable hunt ever with Laker. And it was at one point, Suzanne decided that she wanted to go hunting. She wanted to see the dogs work. And she kept that up for a long time. She goes once a year. She doesn't carry a gun. She just wants to, see her babies work. And so one morning, Laker was only maybe 2 or 3 and drove down to north of Butler in DeKalb County to hunt one of my favorite properties. It was just loaded with parks on the east-west gravel road. We got out, and at that time, before on-X hunt, I would literally write down what time I left the vehicle and then what time I got back. And that's how I kept track of my infield hours. So I wrote the time down and excuse me, allergies right there. I'm getting tired of it. But I turned Laker loose and he went about 20 yards and he slammed into a point. And I walked up there and a hen and a rooster went up. And the hen went up a little bit before the rooster. And so Laker ran after that hen. And we discussed this before. There's pros and cons, but I'm a foot hunter. I'm not a field trialer. So I've never wanted any of my dogs steady to wing. So they will chase the bird because I want him as close to that bird when it hits the ground as possible. So he chased after this hen, and I dumped the rooster. I got the rooster and walked over, picked the rooster up, and Laker ran back. And on the way back, he slammed into another point. And I thought maybe it was just residual scent. The dog went up, and another rooster went up, and I got it. And so we walked back to the vehicle, and Suzanne was not joking. She, in all seriousness, she said, well, what are we doing? I thought we were going to go hunting. I said, well, we have a limit. We're done. We're done for the day. And she said, well, that was pretty easy. Said, why is it that most of the time when you take off to hunt for the day, you're going all day? And I said, well, it just doesn't always,
rarely
always work out that way. So when I thought of that story, people love hearing, you love to tell people those stories, about the limit you got or the quick limit or how great your dogs did. And they always, I want to go hunting with you. I want to hunt behind your dogs. Or I want to go to Kansas. I want to go to South Dakota.
Yeah.
Last year in Kansas, the exact 180 of that hunt, a good friend of mine, Aaron Williams, and I were in Kansas. And by far the longest day put in last year. We walked 15.5 miles that day. And we put up exactly 2 covey of quail and didn't harvest a bird. So, you don't run around telling people those stories, but that's what you have those too.
More of those.
You do.
There's more of those.
Yeah. So and a lot of the times to put yourself in a position for that great hunt, you had to find those birds in the first place. So, you have to be willing to put, really pound the ground sometimes to set yourself up for those good.
Yeah, you told me about the sage grouse hunt that you had. You put 3 days. Tell a little bit about that just to get some sage grouse.
Last year, 2 years ago, I went sage grouse hunting, and I had gone several years before with a guide. Actually, a guide that turns out to be a good friend of mine now. But so anyhow, I had never done it on my own, so I wanted to do it. Make sure I could do it on my own. Anyhow, I hunted 3 full days, hard days. And the first 2 days, the dogs were never even birding. Found some old sign, but no birds. At the very end of the 3rd day, my youngest dog, Dewey, locked up and he put up a group of 6 and I took one. So the next day, I went back to that same spot and we put up, I think it was 18 birds in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So fast forward to the following year, last year, I'm out there and I'm out there fly fishing with my cousin. He was out there to do some fly fishing. So I took a 1-day break to fish with him. And the next day he went hunting with me. So we drove an hour from where we were staying to that spot. And we got out of the vehicle and turned the dogs loose, and Creek went about 100 yards. And I said, Creek's birdie. He's birdie. Let's get up there. And this explosion, I don't know, 15 sage grouse went up and we each dropped 2. We're done. So we drove an hour to get there. We're done in 5 minutes. And so we're going to do a meeting. I'm going to meet him out there in 3 weeks, and we're going to do it again, the hunt again. He sent me a text, said, hey, I've got some pretty high expectations. I'm expecting another 5-minute limit. And I don't know if that's going to happen.
Yeah. So I tell my oldest, who hunts with us a lot now, and when he's younger, he gets frustrated, but now he starts to understand. It's like just where the birds. It's always the next hill.
Yeah.
You're gonna find them when you find them, and you just gotta, like almost the dog gods, like you gotta put the time and effort into anything just to get that opportunity.
I mean, and I always think of that too. When I've taken, as you get older, the group of guys you hunt with becomes pretty small because you really only want to hunt, at least I do, with guys who are just small, guys who are earned it. They've put the time, and that's the guys I want to hunt.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And also, guys who can, at the end of a day where you've walked 15 miles and you didn't shoot a bird, you're still all excited about the next day and ready to roll again.
Yep. Yeah, it's taken years to find those guys. I got a few of them myself now. They get it. They like being out there just as much as.
I remember years ago hunting with a guy. A whole group went up to northern Michigan to grouse hunt, and only a few of us had dogs. And so a friend of mine paired this guy with me. and 200 yards into the woods, that guy didn't even want to be there.
Oh yeah.
And just,
Oh yeah. The grouse woods will separate the people that want to follow the dog. Yeah, blooding.
Swing your
Yeah,
gun.
or you get into those muddy bogs and you're 10 miles from a truck and you got to hike the knee deep muck through the woodcock country. Yeah, that'll separate the guys that want to be out there from the guys that don't. So, yeah. Um, the other hunt you mentioned, I know you've got a tri-state slam. That's a great story about with Laker.
Well, it was I made it up.
Yeah.
where we live, where all 3 states come together. And so there's a window back when we had birds, obviously, where all 3 states, the season was in at the same time, because Michigan comes in and then it will go out during their deer season, and it comes back in December 1st. And back then, their late season, that December hunt, they had a 1 bird limit. So Laker was born on December 4th. So I used to take his birthday off school. That's how crazy I am. I take Laker's birthday off to try. My goal was to get a limit in all 3 states. And it wasn't uncommon for me to hunt multiple states in a day because I live right there.
Yeah.
But I had never been able, and I had shot birds in different states, I'm saying, but I'd never been able to pull that off. In 1998, I did it. I finally did. It was the only time I did it. The Michigan bird was always the hardest bird to get. Didn't have much property in Michigan. I did have a little bit of private property. So the goal was to start the morning in Michigan and hopefully get your Michigan bird. And if I didn't have it by noon, I'm taking off for Ohio and Indiana, where I had that particular day. It was be December 4th, 1998. Got a rooster, got one early in Michigan. So I'm great. And I loaded Laker up and we started heading to Ohio. And I got down the road, and on the way to the vehicle, we had bumped a covey of quail, which just doesn't happen a lot. And back then it did happen occasionally, but now it's unheard of. And so I was so focused on trying to get this limit in all 3 states that's all I was focused on, getting pheasant. And I got down the road and I thought, you know what, how often do I have a chance to work him on quail? So we drove back, I unloaded him, and we tried to find some singles. And I think I got 1 or 2 single quail. And then we were off to Ohio and was lucky enough to get 2 birds in Ohio. And then ended up over west of where SDI is now, on a Zeisloff farm outside of Butler, and took my 2 Indiana birds. So that was my tri-state slam that I tried. That was probably the 6th or 7th, 98 and 92. So the 6th year that I
tried that.
And that was the one and only year that I pulled it off. And I always thought, okay, what if at the end of the day in Indiana, what if the game warden wants to check me and I'm over my limit? Is he going to buy, well, 1 of these came from Michigan, 2 from Ohio, 2 from Indiana. Thankfully, I never had to.
Yeah, he's going to ask the one from Michigan where he was shot at, and he'd show you the mitten. That's how he might get away with that one.
That was tri-states.
Yeah, that's still an impressive thing. And I have a lot of your stats here, and it is impressive. It's states hunted in over the lifetime here: Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, South Dakota, Kentucky, Iowa, Nebraska, Wyoming, North Dakota, Kansas, Arizona, Minnesota, Montana, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Texas, and then Ontario. And since we're mainly pheasant guys, 1,844 pheasants and 126 rough grouse. And we joke about how many misses that took to get those birds.
I told you this, the first time I ever went grouse hunting in northern Michigan, there was a group of us, and a grouse got up and it flew over my way, and I didn't shoot. And I'll never forget, the guy said, "Why didn't you shoot?" And I said, "I didn't have a very good look at it." And he goes, "That's as good a look as you're ever going to get." And I didn't know how right he was.
Yeah.
And so, with grouse, it's just throw lead at them as quick as you can.
Yeah, hopefully find a window and hope they move through it.
Great experience of you didn't think you hit it and your dog comes
back with them.
That's a good moment.
Yeah, that is a good moment. Yeah, 19. Do you have a plan for 2000 when you hit 2000?
The thing is, almost all of my hunting for the first 20 years, the vast majority of it was pheasant, because that's what we had.
Yeah.
And you would get the occasional woodcock, or you might go up to northern Michigan for a couple of days to grouse hunt, and you would still occasionally get a covey of bobwhite quail up, but 99% of everything was pheasant. And my first Western trips were pheasant. Now I love to experience all the different birds, and there's 22 that's on my list. There's a couple others, but there's 22 on my list. I'm at 16 right now. I need 6 more.
Yeah, we're gonna try to hook up for that chucker next. Like, I seriously, like, I would love to go do that with you.
Chucker is one, and I keep telling myself, buddy, if you're gonna do a chucker hunt, you need to do it sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because I've never had the best knees, and hopefully in January I'm going to go to Northern California and try to get a valley quail and a mountain quail. If I could get lucky enough to get those, then I'd be down to 4. And the last 3, other than a checker, would be the 3 ptarmigan in Alaska. Yeah, and we just spent 2 weeks in Alaska in July, and when we were in Denali, got to see willow ptarmigan running around with their little ones, and that just it gets you all fired up.
Yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back. Laker was a little bit of a local celebrity. He was not only a bird dog, but he kind of had the neighborhood in the palm of his hand, didn't he?
He was kind of like the lake mascot. We live on a small lake that a lot of us up there had dogs, and the dogs are not leashed or kenneled, most of them, and they can. Laker, he just owned that south side of our lakeshore. At that time, we had no year-round residents, except we were the only year-round residents. It was all summer lake cottages. And so people would roll in the summer on a Friday evening and roll out on a Sunday evening. And Laker figured out very quickly who had stuff on the grill, who would feed him. And he went through an annual metamorphic change. He would get extremely big in the summertime. And then fall would roll around and we would hunt hard, and he would slim up and look great. And so he would go from a pretty hefty dog to a pretty lean dog. And that cycle probably wasn't good for him. I actually put a sign up on our Lake Association Road. I made a sign. I still have it hanging in our garage. Please don't feed Laker, because he would get pretty big. And then everybody on our lake knew him. And people knew him and didn't know Suzanne and I. And sometimes they would see us out on the lake and they'd say, "Oh, there's Laker." Well, there's Laker's owners. They didn't know our name, but they knew Laker.
They knew that. Yeah.
And he was my first dog, and he went everywhere with me. He fished bass tournaments with me. He went mushroom hunting with me. He went everywhere with me. And we literally grew up together. I got him when I was in my 20s and lost him when I was in my early 40s. And that was a pretty, that's whenever you lose one, it's
it's the worst thing.
After a while, and you kind of step back and say, man, the positives outweigh that negative.
Yep.
He's the one that started it all, though. When I drive by where he's buried, I look over at him and I say, "Hey, buddy, you started all this. You started, everything. Our whole life revolves around
that dog." That started with Laker. Yeah. You remember his last bird? Not everybody does. I don't remember mine.
I do remember his last bird because I had never been out west. We had such good hunting here. I had no reason to go out west. And in 2003, I taught with a lady that their family owned ground in South Dakota. And so worked out an arrangement where we're going to go out and hunt the property. So it was the first ever Western trip. And there were 3 of us, my cousin Tom, who I hunted with initially here in Indiana when I still had ground here in Indiana. And you probably had Tom as a teacher.
Yeah, biology. Yep.
So Mike Spangler and Tom and I went out to South Dakota, and that was in 2003, and Laker was on his last leg. That was his last season. So he never got to hunt out west. That was my first trip was, his last. And at the end of the day, we had put some birds up, and I'd watched a bird fly over by our vehicles and land in a little thick pocket. And Laker wasn't hunting. I took him out for real brief little hunts. He hadn't scored on a bird. And so we put all the dogs up, and I told the guys, I said, "This one's just Laker and I." And I took Laker over there to that spot, and sure enough, he found that bird and locked it up, and I shot it. And we had another week or 2 of hunting here back home, but he didn't get a bird after that. But South Dakota was his very last bird, and it was his only trip and only bird in South.
Only Western bird.
And he would have been a good Western dog because he was hard charging. And that's what Creek is now. Creek's a great Western bird hunting dog. And that's why I retired when I did, so I could get creek out west.
Yeah. It's definitely, we don't have them here anymore. Not,
Right.
I mean, I think there might be pockets, but I haven't hunted. The last bird I killed in Northeast Indiana was probably 2005-06 on the Garmin farm. You know, before then the next year they plowed it all under and started farming it again.
I think it was 15 states last year. There was one state that I didn't shoot a bird in, and that was him.
That was here.
I hunted a couple of spots and put a few hens up, but did not shoot a bird in Indiana. And I have a life license in Indiana.
Yeah, we don't have the grass anymore. It's gone.
Yeah.
It's all back to farm. Well, John, I appreciate your time. It's always fun to have you out here and to do all these talks and bird dog stuff. And I know, like I said it before, you're always, that new dog you got, you're always welcome back out here to help us get them going. We'll be more involved in the training process and retirement than maybe in the past. But yeah, it's always cool to hear stories. I know, seriously, with all sincerity, like I would love to hook up with you and hunt the Nevada, Idaho, or Utah and get that chucker with you. Yeah, my next fall, that's why I got Happy. He's going to be my big Western running dog, mainly to go chase some chuckers.
That would be great, because this is the third year that I'm hunting a pretty similar schedule, and I really want to mix it up next year and do some different stuff.
Yeah, we'll have to connect for sure. So, well, next week episode will be Drew will be on to talk about his best bird dog he's ever had, Blaze, and that's our time for the week. See y'all next week. Thanks, guys.